right, so today I want to talk about hiring the right real estate agent to represent you, especially while you're going through changes, like let's just say divorce. The reason why I think this is such a hot topic is for the following reasons. So back in 2013, I was going through a divorce. I kind of was I guess, at everyone's mercy, if you want to call it that. And the reasons were because number one, I had never hired an attorney. Number two, I had never been into any kind of legal disputes of any sort. And number three, I just recognized that I probably would need to sell my home. And the unfortunate part about divorces, in my opinion, it's this feeling of like a death, a change. Things aren't going to be the same. The house that you built dreams in are all shattered. So you're already coming from a place of being broken. So at the time, I didn't really have anyone that I can confide in as far as any realtors. So I go to my divorce attorney and I said, I really need to put the house on the market. So who do you recommend? And not knowing what I know today, I didn't do my research, meaning, does this person have good communication skills? Does this person have the good background? Does the person have the ability to get the job done? And also have the sympathy of this life change that was happening. So she didn't have any of those things. She was highly recommended by the attorney, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to hire her. The attorney said that she, sells high-end properties. The property that I was selling at the time, I think we had put about $1 million in the property. So, probably market value would be about $2.5 million for this house. Understanding that it's 2013, the market doesn't call for that kind of price or amount. So she comes through the house. Everything, by the way, was really custom made. From the pool, had a lazy river. We had a chandelier that had a lift that would drop the chandelier down and you would be able to clean it on site. So we put a lot of money into this property. She comes and walks around the house, says, you know what? This house is probably worth about 1.8 million if you're even lucky in this market. And I will say that a lot of the time we believe that our properties are much better than what they really are. And I see it all the time where it's like, my house is worth more than that because I did these specific things to it. And I'm not going to say that I may have not been guilty of that. However, she did then compare herself. She's like, my house was around the corner and it sold for 1.8 million and there's no way you're getting more than that. So I said, okay, well, I respect that. I believe my house is worth about 2.5 million. And I said, but I understand that the market does not call for that price. So I feel comfortable with listing the house at 1.99. Well, she says, okay, I'll list it for 1.99, but what is your bottom line? And I said, well, I guess 1.8 million would be fine. So I would like to add also, she would send people to my house and not once would she show it. Not once would she answer the phone. She would just text me and say, hey, there is a couple coming through and they want to see the house. So show them your house, basically. So I'm basically doing her work at this point. So people are coming in and out. And I will say that it was really challenging for me. I found myself wanting to maybe get into an emotional state of crying. And I remember I'd have to tell myself, take a deep breath and just count to 10, and there's no crying in business. There's no crying in business. So I'd have to gracefully open the door and tell myself, there's no crying in business. There is no reason why I should have hired a real estate professional that then I'd have to talk myself into opening the door and showing my house, because that's the reason why she was hired. And so I went through the process of having to do that. She never showed the house. She just would text and would not answer the calls. Finally, the listing expired, thank God. I mean, I think that that's what got me off the hook. While simultaneously, because our house payment at the time was $12,500, there's no way in this God's green earth I was going to be able to pay that. So I was going through a loan modification and simultaneously doing a loan modification. So thank God I was able to stay in the property an additional 9 months without having to pay, the house payment. So also simultaneously, the bank came back and said, you've been approved for a loan modification at $3,800. So I thought, wow, I might just be able to stay here. It's a big 7,000 square foot home on an acre. And it was a really beautiful house. But then slowly but surely, I started noticing like my ex-husband was coming in. He had come in, stole my handbags. He would come in and steal the TVs. He would come in and steal the things in the house. He would break in. And by this time, the listing had expired, thank God. And oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, she kept the listing as an active listing. And I kept texting her and telling her, please remove my house off the MLS, because I thought, well, if I wanted to sell it in the future, it's not just collecting unnecessary days on the market, that then if I go back to market, it's going to look like the house didn't sell because it was on the market for a long time. So she's like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. So anyway, you know, we're having this side conversation. Bank comes back, says you've been approved. Yes, $3,800 a month. You know, that's what your new loan is. I was completely ecstatic about that. And at the same time, I'm getting like literally robbed, right? I mean, he's breaking into the house. So I had this really hard talk with myself. And I said, you're just never going to be able to move from this place. You're never going to be able to just pick up the broken pieces and continue. He's not going to allow it. So I'm a woman of faith. I started to pray. I mean, pray. And I just said, God, I just hope to God that like somehow by the miracles of God, someone knocks on the door and says they want the house. And I'm just praying for this and praying for this and praying for this. And I think about a day and a half later, if you can believe it, a gentleman that, you know, became so significant in my life, and I'm not going to mention any names here, knocks on my door. He's probably like 6'5", African-American, big build dude, really nice, the sweetest man I've probably ever met. And he knocks on my door and says, hey, I noticed your house is no longer in the market, but I have an interested buyer and he really wants your house. And I said, oh my gosh, I've been praying for you. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, I'm going to spare you a little bit with the details. Point of the matter is that we were able to negotiate a deal for $2.1 million with the house fully furnished. This was being sold to an NFL player's manager, and they wanted it just the way the house was. So what I'm trying to say is this real estate professional that stated that my house would not sell for $1.8 million, number one, she was incorrect, sold for $2.1 million. Number two, she never came to show the house. She gave me that as her job. And then to top it off, all of this is going on simultaneously. Once I close escrow at $2.1 million, now of course I have to go find a place. She sues me for unpaid commissions. Like, she has the audacity to come back and sue me for unpaid commissions. Thank God I had everything on record. I was able to prove that the house was no longer actively, like we were no longer in contract. He knocked on my door maybe 2 months after the listing had expired, which is pretty potentially common. And the house sold, and I came to the realization that it's so important to not just base, you know, the lead, or you just like base your decision on the fact that, number one, I have this divorce attorney that's telling me, hey, I highly recommend her. She's really great. She's amazing. And I will say that people that were coming through were saying things like, oh, so the least you're going to take is 1.8 million, right? And I was like, well, you know, what do you mean? And it was like a constant thing. So I think she was just not wanting to work the listing, and the audacity of her to come back and try to sue me for unpaid commissions when she never worked the property like the way she should have. And I mentioned that to the attorney. You know, I said, how dare she? She has no legal recourse against me. And so, of course, I think the attorney was smart enough to know that there was no legal recourse. She could not come after me. So if I had to say, if you're going through a life change and you're hiring a professional, it's so important to understand that, you know, you're going through the biggest transition of your life. You know, this could have been the home where your kids came home from the hospital. And that's always such a touchy thing for us women to say, wow, you know, I thought that, you know, my daughter was going to celebrate her quinceañera here, or we were going to do baptisms and more birthdays and, you know, barbecuing and the whole nine, and life changes. So understanding that this person has their best interest in you and giving you top dollar, and understanding you're going through changes, there's emotional roller coasters, there's a lot of different changes that are going to happen. Make sure that when you hire someone, that you hire them for the right reasons, and then it's not for their own selfish reasons, which is to obviously collect commission, which is what she was trying to do. And even after she failed me in every aspect of this listing, she still tried to come back and sue me. Obviously, she had no legal recourse to come after me. But I think that, you know, as a woman that, you know, went through a divorce, understanding like what this person is going to do for you, because at the end of the day, you're hiring them to do a job. You're not hiring them to fill their pocketbooks. It's for them to work for you, to work for your listing, to get you top dollar, and to do it in a way that is seamless, not making things more chaotic for you and having you go into prayer and say, oh my gosh, there's no crying in business. There's no reason why she should have put me through that, but she did. And so with that being said, make sure that you do your homework. And even if this lead or this referral comes from your attorney, check them out completely. So that's all I got for you today. Have a wonderful day.